Today we're going to dive into a pretty profound and honestly a difficult topic. We're going to look at a deep fracture in our modern world, but not through the usual headlines. We're going to use the lens of philosophy to try and understand what's really going on. So let's get into it.
This right here, this is the question that's really at the heart of everything we're going to talk about. It forces us to stop and think, what is progress, really? Is it just about new tech and more money? Or is it about something deeper, like how we treat each other, especially the most vulnerable? This is the question that will guide us.
So, the Jeffrey Epstein case is going to be our central example. But we're not here to rehash the news story. We're looking at it as a moral earthquake, something that sent shockwaves through our society and revealed some really unsettling cracks in the very foundation of how we operate.
Okay, so to really get a grip on the core of this violation, we're going to turn to a philosopher named Immanuel Kant. His ideas give us the language to understand exactly what went so horribly wrong.
This is Kant's golden rule, his big idea. So, what does it actually mean? Well, in simple terms, it means every single person has value in and of themselves. They're not a tool you can use. They're not a stepping stone to get what you want. They are the destination. Their dignity, their humanity, that's the point. And this is what it looks like when that beautiful principle is not just broken, but systematically turned on its head. In these kinds of exploitation networks, people are no longer people. They're turned into objects. Their bodies are treated like commodities to be bought and sold. Children become products. This isn't just a moral slip-up. It's a total moral collapse.
All right, now we need to zoom out. We're moving from a single evil act to the system that allows it, protects it, and even encourages it. We're talking about the very architecture of evil.
This is such a critical concept. Look, every society has criminals, right? But structural evil, that's different. That's when the wrongdoing gets baked into the system itself, the institutions, the networks, the culture. The evil becomes part of the furniture. So how do you build a structure like that? Well, here are the pillars that hold it up. You've got massive amounts of money, you've got political influence, and you've got elite connections. But that fourth one, deliberate silence, that might just be the strongest pillar of them all. It's the glue that holds the whole corrupt thing together. Now, to understand the kind of philosophical climate that lets this happen, we have to talk about Friedrich Nietzsche. When he famously said, "God is dead," he wasn't just talking about church on Sunday. He was talking about the death of a single, shared, absolute moral truth, that North Star that everyone could use to tell right from wrong.
And here's what happens when that North Star disappears. It's like a chain reaction. First, the moral lines in the sand get washed away. Then, whoever has the most power gets to decide what's true. And finally, the most important question people ask themselves changes from, is this the right thing to do, to a much scarier question, can I get away with it?
This leads us to another really powerful idea, this time from the philosopher Hannah Arendt. She studied evil up close and came to a chilling conclusion. The greatest horrors are often committed not by some cartoon villain, but by ordinary people. People just doing their jobs, following the rules, and refusing to think about the real-world consequences of their actions. And here's what those enablers look like. They're not monsters. They're the clerk who just files the report away, the officer who drags their feet on investigation, the judge who gets cold feet, the journalist who decides a story is too risky to publish. Each of these small, seemingly minor decisions not to act becomes another brick in the wall of a terrible system. Okay, let's really zero in on that last point because it's so important, the complicity of silence. The key takeaway here is that silence isn't passive. It is an active, powerful choice.
I want you to really look at this slide. It totally reframes how we think about silence. We usually see it as just nothing, an absence. But when you're facing a huge injustice, silence is the opposite of nothing. It's a choice. It's a decision. In its own way, it's a form of participation.
And of course, the media can play a big part in this whole cycle. The story will explode, there's outrage everywhere, it's all anyone can talk about. But then, the news cycle moves on. The headlines fade, the public's attention shifts, and the underlying system, the network of power and influence, it just goes back into the shadows, completely intact, and waits for things to quiet down.
So after looking at the moral collapse, the architecture of evil, and the power of silence, you have to ask, right? Is this it? Is this just how things are now? Is there a way forward?
This is the million-dollar question. When you're staring into an abyss this deep and a system this corrupt, it is so easy to feel completely hopeless. But our analysis doesn't just leave us there in the dark.
And the answer is a definite yes.
There is hope. Why? Because if you look at history, it's just full of these giant systems of oppression that seemed absolutely permanent, unbeatable, and every single one of them eventually fell. That's our foundation for hope.
Now, change doesn't usually happen overnight in some big, dramatic explosion. It's usually a slow burn. It starts with awareness, spreading from person to person. The truth starts to build up, like grains of sand in a pile. And eventually, that pile of truth gets so heavy that the lies holding the whole rotten system up just can't take the weight anymore. They start to crack, and then they crumble.
So, here's the bottom line. We have to move past thinking this is just a story about one evil guy. This whole case is like a mirror being held up to our society, reflecting a choice that we all have to make. Are we going to wake up and fight for human dignity? Or are we just going to let ourselves slide further down this path?
And that brings us to the very end. The final, most important question isn't about him. It's not a history question. It's a question for right now, for the future, and it's aimed at every single one of us. After seeing the earthquake and the cracks it revealed, who do we, as individuals and as a whole society, choose to become?